Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for our latest live video. As ever, we are on the various different platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, as well as our YouTube channel as well. So thank you everyone for joining us. Bit of a special one today because we're joined by Pete Evans, and we're also, as you can see on the screen, joined by Dave Kurlan. So Dave's all the way in the USA, so it's nice and early for Dave. I think it's around 7 a.m. Is that correct, Dave?
That's right.
Oh, so thank you very much. We really appreciate you joining us at such an early hour.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here.
So, as ever with these videos, obviously we are going live, but we also do record them and download them afterwards, and they'll be going on the various channels. We open this up, so if people are watching and I've got questions to ask, please do feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. We'll probably be on for about half an hour today, but if not, if you're watching it pre-recorded, then we can pass the questions on to Pete, and I'm sure he'll be to field some of them afterwards as well. So before I kind of jump into the questions, if we could just kind of maybe just have a quick introduction. So I've come to you first, Pete, if that's all right, just to introduce yourself, and then we can go to Dave.
Yeah, so I'm Pete Evans. I'm the Managing Director of SalesStar in the UK, which is also a partner of the Objective Manager Group, or OMG as refer to them. So we're a sales transformation business working primarily with clients in the UK to transform sales performance. And that's how I know Dave. So I'll let over to you, Dave, and you can introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Mike. I'm Dave Kurlan. I'm the founder and the CEO of Objective Management Group, and we are the leading provider of sales-specific, accurate, predictive sales team evaluations and sales candidate assessments.
Thank you very much, guys. So that's great. It's a great kind of background into what you two guys do now. So the first thing I want to talk about, it's quite a big issue at the moment here in the UK generally, is around hiring staff, around people. It's quite high profile here at the moment. So it'd be really interesting to know from you guys, what are the challenges around, obviously very specifically in your case, hiring salespeople for both small and big businesses?
And who would you like to answer that question?
We've got to come to you first, Dave. Why not?
Well, there's a couple of obvious challenges. One is most companies who hire salespeople in the traditional way experience hit or miss success. And the emphasis is on miss. It just doesn't work out half the time. And I'm not measuring doesn't work out by turnover. I'm measuring doesn't work out by the number of people who fail to meet or exceed quota. The second challenge is that there aren't enough really good candidates out there right now. So for what is out there, companies need a way to be able to differentiate between the wannabes and the real deal.
What about for you, Pete? What do you think the biggest challenges are?
Yeah, I think it's getting more and more difficult for businesses to, first of all, attract the right people to even apply for the role. I think in the UK we're at a period where, we're almost, lots of different sectors are seeing it very difficult to attract candidates to apply for the role. Then I think it's difficult to get the right person into the role. We have an expression, salespeople do their best selling in the interview. So if you're not using a tool to actually pre-screen, you're doing yourself a disservice. So I think there's pressure on organizations to hire and almost to fill a territory or an area and have somebody in, because they say somebody in there producing or selling is better than nobody, and they don't realize the damage that person is doing to the organization, and then they don't take into account the cost of having to coach and develop that person. And I think the reason that often salespeople don't work out is, even if we hire great people, is through lack of onboarding, proper onboarding. So I think that's my opinion. I think it's getting more challenges, and companies having to be more innovative in how they attract talent as well to the organization. David, is there anything you want to add to that?
Oh, you covered it wonderfully, Pete.
I think my interesting thing is, obviously I've done a bit of research on what you do, Dave, is around data. Essentially, I think it's, from what I understand, it's a big part of what you do. Using data to well, in many different ways, but to hire the right people. Do you want to kind of explain to us kind of how important that is and how it's used as well? It'd be really interesting to find out more.
Well, sure. Data definitely plays a part, but I think data plays a part after the dust has settled. When it comes to hiring sales candidates, we measure 21 sales core competencies, the 21. And some of those competencies are more important than others, depending on the role. Pete was talking about whether somebody is the right fit. So a mediocre salesperson might be a perfect fit for one role at one company in one industry, and a great salesperson might not be a fit for that role. Move over to another company with another selling role in a different industry, and the great salesperson might be a perfect fit, and that mediocre salesperson wouldn't be considered at all. So it's all about how somebody scores in those 21 sales competencies, identifying the competencies that are most important in the role, and then making sure that we're recommending the person who's the best fit for that role. So the data comes into play later, when we can look at a company, when we can look at an industry, when we can look at a region of the world, when we can look by any kind of filter that we want, and we can see where salespeople compare to the norms, to the best, to the worst, and see trends. And we can see which competencies have the most significant impact on success, which attributes in those competencies have the greatest impact on success. For example, today, decision makers are harder to reach than ever before. And salespeople who reach actual decision makers, not who think they're reaching decision makers, but who actually reach decision makers, are 341% more likely to close the business than those who don't.
Wow, that's huge. What about for you, Pete?
Yeah, I think the data is really important. Just to come back to what Dave was saying, the ability to actually help an organization understand how good or bad their salespeople are, the effectiveness of those salespeople, is really crucial when we're wanting to train, coach, and develop people. And what we talk about right at the start of an engagement is we're going to take the guesswork out of the interventions that are needed to really help your organization go from good to great in selling. I often use the the example from a sort of healthcare perspective that if you go to the GP, to your doctor, and say that I've got a pain in your chest, and before you walk through the door, the GP says, "Here's a few tablets." They've not done a diagnosis. I relate what the OMG sales evaluation can do. It's a bit like going to the hospital for an MRI scan. The surgeon or the specialist is really going to fully understand the surgery they need to implement. And sometimes when we're working with businesses, I think Dave would agree, we've got to operate complete surgery on the sales function, to actually help them get better. And what the data shows is where you've got to give those interventions quickly from a coaching perspective, from a development perspective. And that's a great point of differentiation. Exactly.
And I just used the getting to decision makers example. If we drill down on that a little, 46% of salespeople believe they're reaching decision makers, but only 13% actually reach decision makers.
That's a big difference, isn't it?
It's a huge difference.
So why do they think that? Why do they think that when it's not the reality?
Exactly.
Interesting. Well, we had a really good question actually on the YouTube page from Chris. I'm just going to put it on the screen there, kind of relating to the question we were talking about earlier. So, and maybe not an exact answer to this, but what's the average true cost of making the wrong hiring decision when it comes to hiring a single salesperson?
It's a great question, and there's a number of different ways to measure it, and there's a range of that cost depending on what companies invest in bringing salespeople on, and how much they invest in onboarding salespeople, and how much their products and services sell for. So I've seen that range as low as 150,000 US dollars and up to $1.5 million US dollars for one bad hiring decision.
I think either way, that's a large amount of money, isn't it?
It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Pete? What's your kind of experiences in this?
We often talk to organisations saying that, it can be between 5 and 10 times annual salary. I think when you ask a company initially, what's the cost of a bad hire, they'll typically say, well, it's the fee we've had to pay the recruiter, it's the 3 or 4 months salary if the salesperson's lasted that long. They don't take into account other hidden costs about the reputational costs on that territory, the loss of opportunities, loss of business to the competition. So I think it's really important that organisations truly qualify the cost of a poor hire. And I know, Dave, you've talked about and we've got a calculator, the sales goal, so the legacy of the poor hire as well.
Yeah, the people who are long gone, but whose memory keeps coming back.
Yeah. And I was talking to a client the other week, and they said they so regretted hiring somebody. They said 3 years after of having that person for 6 months, there are still companies that won't do business with them.
Yeah, because those people still come back to haunt the company because the customer experience was so bad, or they screwed something up, or they lost customers to the competition.
Yeah, I think the other thing as well, which, and it doesn't surprise me now, but when you talk to a business about having a robust hiring process, including an assessment tool, they're often not prepared to invest as much in hiring somebody who's going to generate a lot of revenue for the organization, or put as much due diligence into the hiring process as they would in investing in a new IT system, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah, if they're investing in a new IT system that's going to cost them hundreds of thousands of pounds, they'll have a process for choosing the supplier, but they won't have the same process for hiring a salesperson, because they'll often go on the gut feeling.
Yeah, gut, or they're just plain stubborn. It's terrible. HR doesn't want to change the way they hire people in general. Human resources may be great at hiring employees, but hiring salespeople is completely different. They don't recognize that salespeople, there's competition that are trying to prevent that salesperson from succeeding. There are prospects who are hiding from salespeople and don't even want to talk to them. And then the salespeople have demons of their own, their fears and their discomforts that make it difficult for them to do selling specific things. And until HR recognizes that salespeople are a different animal, they get stubborn about wanting to do anything differently. And sales managers want to rely on their gut instinct, even though their gut instinct has never given them better than a 50% track record. And CEOs, they're stubborn in that they allow all this mediocrity to continue and won't hold anybody accountable for increasing the rate of success of how it is these days, for increasing the rate of success of reps hitting quota. That hasn't been over 50% for 5 years. And they don't seem to demand any changes in that. And it's the same with the outcomes of hiring salespeople. The new salespeople don't hit quota either. So until the stubbornness goes away, until people are willing to change how they go about the process of hiring salespeople, the results don't change.
Yeah. I think there's something else to build on there as well. The number of companies which say we want an A-grade sales person, but they've got to have specific sector experience. And I say I'm often looking out the window of that tree of those people, because there's a tree of A-grade salespeople from your sector, Michael. So let's go and hire them. And the reason that companies won't hire an A-grade salesperson from a different sector is what they'll come back to is, but Pete, we'll have to put in place a proper onboarding process to give them technical training, which is giving you a good indication about their culture. Because if they were to hire an accountant, for example, they would invest in continued professional development for that accountant. And I'll often push back and say, so before your accountant joined you, Michael, what sector did he work in? Oh, he came from a completely different sector. So you didn't hire an accountant with experience in the chemical engineering sector. No, we hired the best person. So what training do you bring into one's? But they won't apply the same logic to the sales function.
Carrying on that concept where CEOs don't seem to want to do anything to change the never-ending cycle of salespeople not hitting quota. What would they do if the CFO could only find 50% of the money?
Yeah,
they wouldn't put up with that, but they seem to put up with not hitting forecast, not hitting quota, not hitting goals, just fine. It's like, well, that's what we expected. It's terrible.
And I think there's something else on that, Dave, as well, accepting declining margins as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And discounting.
The race to the bottom.
Yeah.
So I kind of move on, and actually, Dave, the dog's barking is actually a perfect segue into the kind of next thing I was going to kind of cover, which was around kind of.
That's not any dog barking. That's Dinger.
Oh, Dinger. Okay, Dinger.
Dinger.
Is the kind
Dinger
of
gets featured in my blog once in a while.
Well,
Dinger, the dog that's smarter than salespeople.
But it's an indication of the impact of the pandemic, isn't it? The working from home and what's going on, and kind of the question all about video selling as opposed to face-to-face selling. Be interested to know your thoughts on how that's changed the industry and how COVID's had an impact. We've had a couple of questions in actually, and I'll flash them up on the screen. But just to generally understand, what the impact of COVID, apart from the obviously practical side of it, but the industry as we move forward.
Well, I think, the pandemic was awful, and there's nothing that can be said to dispute that. But if there is a benefit to the pandemic, it's the fact that salespeople had to learn to sell over video. And many have, but there's still a lot who haven't, and they still don't think they can sell unless they're face-to-face. People have learned to use video. They've learned to finally present themselves a little better over video. And the advantage that video brings over the phone is that we can see the people that we're selling to, and they can look into our eyes, and there's a better chance that they will trust us and find us credible. So I think video has shortened the sales cycle for a lot of folks who used to sell by phone. Video has allowed us to reach the outer extremities of territories as easily as going next door and visiting a neighbor. And video has allowed us to present things more easily than if we were face-to-face, and we'd have to show people piles of paper. We can easily pop things on the screen. I think video has been a godsend to sales, and it's going to continue being important as long as people don't go back to their old habits.
Well, I'm a massive fan. I think it's there is a place for face-to-face, of course there is, but it's about picking and choosing the right moment. And I think it'll maybe take a little time for the balance to get right and for us to work out what that is. But, I know Pete, for example, the first couple of times we met Pete, and this was before the pandemic, was using Zoom. And, we're 10, 15 miles apart. We're not a long way away, but we use Zoom. And it worked absolutely fine. And there was very much a resistance to it previously. But one of the things I agree with you, Dave, is that the pandemic has kind of forced people down the route to an extent, but that's a good thing.
Yeah,
definitely.
And Dave, what do you say to those organisations that are actively encouraging their salespeople to get out back seeing their clients face to face because they say, "But Pete, it's all about the relationship."
Yeah, I let the clients drive that. If the clients, what I would say to the clients, have they been talking to you and saying, we need to see you in our offices. We need to see you in our plant. We need to see you in our facility. If they aren't asking for that, then why is there such a rush to get back out there if we can have a much more functional meeting this way? It certainly reduces costs. It's certainly more flexible from a time standpoint,
Yeah.
and it eliminates all that wasted windshield time.
Yeah. Definitely. What do you say to those salespeople who say, but Dave, I hear what you're saying, but there's nothing like meeting somebody in person, because you can see the body language. You can't pick up the nuances on screen.
Oh, there's something like meeting people in person. It's doing it this way. And I can see all the body language I need. I don't care what their hands or feet are doing. Are they paying attention? Are they engaged? How are they reacting? I've got a blog article from last month where I asked my dog, Dinger, if he wanted to go for a ride with me. And I play the audio only first. And you hear the little paw steps, and you assume that Dinger ran out to the car. And then I show the video. And what you see is Dinger running the opposite direction and laying down in his bed because he didn't want to go for a ride in the car. And that's what you miss when you're just selling by phone, but you can capture it all on video. There's nothing you would miss on video. It actually forces people to be more attentive than if you're face to face.
One of the things I believe as well from this, Dave, is that because with video, and a lot of people have been obviously doing the videos from home, is actually people have become, you talk about building relationships, have actually built better relationships because people are a bit more essentially themselves. Because
That's
they're at
right.
their own home, they feel a bit more comfortable. Maybe, the dog's barked, or the cat's walked across the screen, or the kids are running, whatever it may be. They're fantastic ways of building relationships around those things.
Sure. Even if you're doing it from your cubicle, it's still the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think it's helped people be more authentic as well?
Yes, that's the right word for it. Especially last year when everybody was actually home.
Yeah.
Everybody was home last year. Now half the people are back. You'll see people in their office. You'll see people in their cubicles. You'll still see people at home, but at least today, they're not doing it from their bedroom, and they're not doing it from the bathroom, and they're not doing it from their closet, and they're not doing it from their basement. They've got themselves a better place to be doing video from. More people are adopting virtual backgrounds, which we don't have the luxury of using over StreamYard, but certainly over Zoom and over Teams. Yeah. You can put in your virtual backgrounds if you don't want to show people that you're in the middle of your kitchen.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one final part I'd like to ask you about, actually, Dave, is around this, salespeople. I often hear you're either a salesperson or you're not. It's a natural thing, and kind of, are you born, are you nurtured kind of idea. And kind of to extend that, it'd be really interesting to ask you this, is that I think by nature, people from the US are a lot more extrovert than people from the UK. And it'd be interesting to see your experiences, what that is like, and how it differs, and the kind of cultural differences, I guess, between the two.
I honestly don't have any data on whether there probably is data, but I never looked at it. But I promise today I will look at the data on extroversion and see if that's true. I'll see if people from North America, United States, are more extroverted than people from the UK. But here's the misconception. People think that extroverted people make better salespeople than introverted people. And they don't. They may be better at making friends, but you don't get paid for making friends. Introverted people are better at listening. And sales is all about listening and then asking questions about what you just heard. And extroverted people don't do that all that well. And I'm the most introverted person on planet Earth. I don't even like people.
Oh, brilliant. What about you, Pete?
I don't think salespeople are naturally born. I'm not quite as introverted as Dave. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. But I think when I first went into sales, into corporate sales, I'd been on an induction course 2 weeks, and then I went to the branch where I was placed. I sort of looked around the room and thought, I think I've actually chosen the wrong career, because it was full of egos. There were 15 other blokes who were really extroverted. But I was fortunate. I had a branch manager, Vincent Keeney, who said, you'll actually be successful. Follow what I show you to do. He said it's actually about listening and asking great questions. And that's well over 25 years ago now. But that's always that's always stuck with me. And what I did was then rose to the top of the region, because it was about listening. It was asking great questions. It was about follow through. And actually, I found that my clients didn't care whether I was an introvert or an extrovert. But you did see a lot of egos coming in who said, all my clients are my friends. I've got great relationships, and I didn't know it. There was none of this ONG stuff that I knew. We were using Thomas International and Disc at the time, but actually, I think that just bears fruit. I think introverts tend to be better listeners, and I think you've got to have the right mindset as well. But yeah, I've been to see what the data tells.
I guess they're kind of on the. Yeah, would you say that generally speaking, like a sales team, like any team, a combination of strengths is a good thing?
Well, everybody should have strengths. A nice balance of strengths is important, but I think that's more important in a leadership team than on a sales team. The only thing that matters on the sales team is that people have the strengths and the skills that would help them be successful. And it doesn't matter what the rest of the team has. Just work on the competencies that will make them better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Dave, I've got a final question for you, which has come as a result of a post that one of my team, Dylan, posted recently. Dylan's our sales apprentice. And we talk a lot about the importance of mindset for a salesperson to be successful. And, the salesperson who has a strong sales DNA but weak skills will always outperform somebody who's got weak sales DNA but great skills. Do you think the expression sales mindset is overused? Because somebody commented that actually, even if you've got a strong mindset, what happens if you've got a really strong sales mindset, but you're working in a toxic environment? Do you think we overuse the expression mindset these days?
I think mindset's really important, and I think it's an appropriate term, but it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. You're using it as an example of being able to block out everything that's going on around you and just being able to focus on what you need to do without being distracted by the toxic environment, without being impacted by the toxic environment. I might use it to define a salesperson who thinks positive thoughts and expects positive outcomes. And somebody else might use it to talk about their attitude. Yeah. So I think mindset's great if we're a little more specific about how we're using the term.
Okay, good.
Makes sense. Thank you, guys. So I just think to finish off, obviously from this conversation, if people want to find out a little bit more about what you guys do and find out a bit about OMG and SalesStar, where's the best places to go and look and to contact you? I mean, I'll start with you, Dave, first, if that's all right.
Sure. We support companies like SalesStar. So Pete, tell people how to reach you, and if they reach you, then they've reached us.
Yeah. So if people want to contact me, they can connect with me on LinkedIn, or my email address is pete.evans@salesstar.com. So or if anybody knows Michael and they want to connect through Michael, more than happy to connect with them.
Yeah, absolutely. For whatever reason you can't find Pete, just come to myself, and I hear from Pete quite a lot, so I'm sure I'll pass his details on to you.
Yeah.
Now, I just find out, we really want to say thank you, Dave, for obviously very early morning for yourself. And it looks a beautiful day in the background. I'm slightly jealous here. So I really want to say thank you for your time.
This is our one beautiful day of the month.
better than we get. We get no beautiful days a month.
We did have a few last week.
Yeah, great.
Well, yeah. I just want to say, I said thank you again, Dave. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me, guys.
And as always, thank you very much, Pete. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you.